So Hannah put that it's an observational study because there's no treatment imposed. Haley's gonna come. Sorry, Sam. I already picked Haley. Come on, Haley. Thank you. All right, so Haley said that because it's an observational study, it does not explain the cause of brain cancer, so we can't conclude that cell phones increase the risk of brain cancer. Sam, did you want to add to that?
I said, in an observational study, you can't draw a cause and effect conclusion.
Beautiful, Sam. Can't draw a cause and effect because it's observational, not an experiment. So today we're going to learn how to design experiments, which you can bet this will be one of your free response questions next week on your test.
Next week? What day?
Thursday, November 18th.
Wait, are we going to break after that?
Yes.
Yes.
No shit, for real?
Wait, what?
Yes, for real.
Yes.
All right. When it comes to designing experiments, there's a few things that we need to make sure of. In the experiments, you must always use random assignment, which, because it shows up so much from here on out, I abbreviate because I'm lazy. So I'll say RA. So you have to use random assignment to assign experimental units to treatments. And that means some sort of chance process. For the most part, it's going to be using your calculator to randomly pick numbers after you assign numbers to the experimental units. There might be times where you could use a chance process, such as like flipping a coin. So like, that was quick.
Yeah, because it's a really good pencil sharpener.
It is a really good pencil sharpener. So like if, I'm trying to think of an example. There's, I don't think we talked about it today. I think we talked about it on Monday. Yeah, Monday. We'll talk about matched pairs design, which is where the same person, like let's say Trey was in the experiment, he would get both treatments and we would have to randomize the order of the treatments, then flipping the coin is a good chance process. But for today, we're going to use the calculator. If you don't like the calculator, you can use table D, that table of random digits I gave you, although I suggest the calculator. Oh, we don't need a calculator.
Oh, you just said, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing.
You're just, we're just designing the experiment. We're not actually going to do the random assignment. That was random. There is school Friday. Tomorrow's Veterans Day. The day after that is a normal day. Oh, no. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Whatever, Tiff.
Wait.
You and I are on different thoughts here. All right, so the other thing when designing experiments, when the treatments are assigned to all the experimental units completely by chance, it's called a comparative randomized design. This is the most common way to do a experiment. Like I said, there's the matched pairs, and then there's a block design that we'll talk about on Monday. But this is the most common way to do it. Sometimes you need to have a control group. Control groups provide a baseline for comparing the effects of all the treatments. Sometimes when you have multiple treatments, that'll serve as your control for the experiment, and then you don't need a control group. Now we're actually going to outline an experiment. So let's say that at North they decided to offer that SAT prep class again this year. It's offered in 2 different formats. So you can do it online, which Trey would choose. Online. Strange. Or classroom teacher. The counselors want to know which teaching method will yield higher SAT scores, so they allowed me to set up an experiment. 50 students have signed up to take some form of the SAT prep class. We're going to outline our experimental design below. So you always start with the number of experimental units, or in this case, subjects. So we have 50 students that have signed up. Then it's going to be kind of like I say tree diagram. We're going to have a bunch of lines that break off and do different things. So first one is just straight, and we're going to do RA, random assignment. Kids forget this step, and if you don't have it, you didn't make an experiment, and you lose points. You have to have random assignment, or you're not making an experiment. So we have 2 treatments, or 2 forms of the class, the online and the classroom teachers. So my 50 students are going to be randomly assigned into 2 groups. Group 1, or Group A, whatever you want to call them, Group 2, and Group B. The labels don't really matter. I'm going to end up with 25 kids here and 25 kids here. The idea behind random, yes?
If this was a real experiment and it was random, there wouldn't be an even amount in each group, would there?
Yeah.
Unless you got lucky or what?
I'm going to get there in just a second. It's the way you explain your random assignment. In a minute, you guys are going to do one on your own. And there's 29 kids, so you're not going to have the same number in each group. But the way that you describe your random assignment is what allows you to put the same in each group. So why don't we go there? So the other thing about random assignment, if you don't put it into your diagram, you lose points. But also just saying random assignment isn't enough to tell me how it's done. So you actually have to, let's see, I'm going to use a different color so it stands out. You actually have to describe how it's done. So down below, I'm going to put RA, and then I'm going to describe what I do. So I have 50 students, So I'm gonna remember when we choose an SRS, we have 2 steps. You label them and then you choose them. So I'm gonna label the students 1 through 50. And I'm gonna do it alphabetically by their last name, so that there's some rhyme or reason to how I label them. Now, we talked about table B, that was this table of random digits. And I said that you can use your calculator or you can use this. You have to know how to use this because they'll put it in multiple choice questions. When it comes to designing experiments, I tend to use the calculator method because if I were actually to do it, I would use my calculator. But if you want to use table D when you design your experiment, you can do that as well. So once I have them labeled, then I'm going to use my calculator, and this is where it would change. So I'm going to use my calculator to choose 25 random numbers. I need to slow down with my words. Use my calculator to choose 25 random numbers between, which I'm abbreviating, between 1 and 50. We have to ignore repeats. If Noah was number 1 and I got number 1 twice in my sample of 25, I can't put him into group 1 twice. So I have to ignore any repeats. And this, Noah, is where I specified that I'm taking 25 kids. And these 25 go into group 1. The 25 other numbers are going to end up in group 2. Choose is 2 O's. Did I misspell it? Chose. You're right. Thank you. No, you're not tripping. I'm not an English teacher. Choose.
I love how you and Lynn are equally the same literary level.
Oh, no. No. I can read really well. Spell? No. Alright. Although he reads very different than me. He reads biographies and stuff, and he reads to learn. I read for entertainment. Now she lost my train of thought. We got our 25 numbers. Oh, these 25 go into group 1. And then the other, sorry, my group and my 1 are really close together. Remaining 25 go to group 2. So now that I have explained how I use random assignment to make group 1 and group 2, then I'm going to say group 1 gets treatment 1, which I'm just going to go in order. Online was listed first in the question, so I'm going to say treatment 1 is the online class. Treatment 2 is going to be the actual teacher. Then at the end, we're going to compare their SAT scores. So So it comes back together. Am I off the compare SAT scores?
Do you have any recycle of cans for us to collect possibly?
Look in the box.
Thank you.
So randomized, we have our random assignment. Comparative, we're comparing at the end. Experiment, we're imposing treatments. So it's a randomized comparative experiment. Do we need a control group here?
Yes.
No.
Just kidding.
Why not? If we needed a control group, I would have put a control group in my design. Carter?
Because we're comparing the difference between in-person and online.
Yeah, we have multiple treatments. If we were just doing the SAT prep class versus no class, well, even that's kind of like two treatments. The control group would be the one that doesn't take the class. But we have two treatments, online, classroom, teacher. So no control group needed. I want a color it's going to stand out from the pink. No, because multiple treatments. No, you're not allowed to leave, Hannah.
Should I finish with that?
Yes. She's like, peace out. All right. Any questions before I tell you to try your own? What, Trey? What's your question? Are you doing your music? All right. So on this one, you guys are going to try it on your own. So the situation is music students often don't evaluate their own performances accurately. Can small group discussions help? The subjects were 29 students preparing for the end of semester performance. That is an important part of their grade. You're going to assign 15 students to the treatment, which is to videotape a practice performance. Ask the student to evaluate it, then have the student discuss the tape with a small group of other students. The remaining 14 students form a control group who watch and evaluate their tapes alone. At the end of the semester, the discussion group students evaluated their final performance more accurately. So, 1, you are going to outline a completely randomized design for this experiment. So you're going to have a diagram like this. You also need to describe how you do your random assignment, which I think I put as 2 so that you actually wouldn't forget it. So diagram here, explain how you do your random assignment, and then answer the question, what's the purpose of the control group here? You guys are going to do those 3 on your own and not stare off into space. You should have given them your can.
Oh, you sold.
Not here for next time.
I don't have a pass. Like this here. Oh my gosh. And they just ignored that. And say it. No, it is. It's just telling you because it's an uneven number that 15 go to the treatment and 14 go to the control group. But it's not telling you which 15 go there and which 14 go there. That's up to the random side. Did you take it from him? Was he playing too much?
He let me use it. Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna use it now. Thanks, Colin. Bunch of things.
Yeah, I just did. I did work. Put on your nose first, lean back.
No, that's a camera.
Good for your head.
Where did I? Okay, I'm just confused.
Sorry. Very soft in space.
I'm thinking.
How to what? I'm sorry.
Randomize this.
You were just labeling one each one. You forgot to put RA there. So you were losing points on your test.
Alright.
Random assignment. In between 29 students and from group 1 and 2. Half to half RA.
What treatment second So was that would that be all of it?
I was like, what is that?
Or like the end result?
Compare.
Compare.
What? End of the semester performance grades? Actually, you want to compare how they evaluated themselves, right?
Yeah, that's comparing the evaluation.
Say that again?
If you comparing the evaluation, so that I don't know how to say this.
You see why you guys play with
I used to have a stress ball when I broke it.
You were just stressed out? Because you were too stressed out.
Excuse me, what?
Like 6 years ago?
We used to have like a metal one of
Hey, you
those.
put on television.
Yeah, that's the one with Bebop. It's like 16 bucks.
Mine is like 50 and I
God.
I got 3 points.
Why do I wait?
Go sit down. Totally would choose you to go to the board with you. That's good treatment.
Maybe that's on purpose.
No, his is almost harder to do than yours.
Okay, but
Let's go to that.
It is.
oh, it also hasn't changed since like 3rd grade.
Like that, Hayden. Yes, yeah. Miss Brown and I look very much alike.
No, I just saw it. It's just on there.
I like
And then you go back to it, and you do compare, evaluate.
That's what about where it's on.
That's why I got so wrong.
It was like over 2 months ago. They chased it down with the fire. Yeah, no, they had like the giant carts. I don't know why it was so big. And my friend got
Yeah, I thought it was knocks before you enter. Anytime somebody knocks, I always assume it's him. But apparently it's not. It was just some random kid in the hallway being annoying.
This girl is walking hallways.
Dance.
Why do you say dance, man?
Yeah, it's because we're walking the hallways.
Today's not Friday.
Well, I don't have a class today.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Wait, what's the version control?
See, I automatically assumed it was somebody playing an instrument.
Oh, there's a band thing here today. Which is.
A jazz festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we gonna watch it?
Will you do A on the board, please? Right, one. Shelley's gonna do one. Molly's doing two.
No.
I noticed reading your number 3 answer. Oh.
Huh? No. Why? Did you go to it? Oh, so bad. Anyway.
Alright, Molly's gonna do two.
Okay. We'll buy you a fidget spinner.
No. Because I wouldn't play with the top pots. Well, yeah, but see, when this class period is over. Sorry.
You don't need clothes.
What?
You don't need those.
No.
That'd be cool.
It would be cool, but I don't think Anna is much more talented than I am. Alright, so a lot of you were halfway there on number 3. I see a lot of you that said stuff like to compare the group, what is it, the group discussion with doing it by yourself. Which is, like I said, it's halfway there. The definition of a control group is to provide baseline. So you need to have something about it's to provide a baseline to compare the treatment to. So we have to provide baseline data for comparison. So like I said, most of you were halfway there. But you do need to have the whole baseline part of the definition in there. Down below, I'm going to talk about the 4 principles of experimental design. I promise there's going to be a question, most likely multiple choice, but there's going to be a question about these principles. So make sure you know them. The first one is compare. So you have to use a design that compares 2 or more treatments. Random assignment, which I'm going to abbreviate as RA. So you have to use chance, which is using your calculator, the table of random digits, to assign experimental units to treatment. Doing so helps create roughly equivalent groups. Of experimental units by balancing the effects of other variables among the treatment groups. The third one is control. You need to keep other variables that might affect the response the same for all groups. And the last one is replication. So you need to use enough experimental units in each group so that any difference in the effects of the treatments can be distinguished from chance differences between the groups. I don't know about you guys, but replication makes me think like repeat. And I've had kids in the past who think that it means that you have to be able to repeat the experiment and get the same results. Really what replication is that you're using enough experimental units. So they're telling you to use a big sample size. Remember how I said bigger sample size is always better? That's what replication is telling you. I'm really upset. I used to have this cool video that I showed about placebos. And I went to the website and it's no longer there. Makes me very angry. So we're going to talk about placebos really quick. So some experiments give a placebo, which is a fake treatment, to the control group. They do that to help prevent confounding due to the placebo effect. The placebo effect is where some patients get better because they expect the treatment to work even though they received an inactive treatment. In the experiments, you do not want the experimental unit to know whether they get the treatment or the placebo. When you have that, it's called single blind. So if I was in some sort of experiment where there was a treatment that you could actually see, which I always think of like where they do clinical experiments to try out new prescription drugs and somebody's taking a pill. The other group has to get a placebo, a sugar pill, so that you don't know whether you're getting the treatment or not. Then it's single blind. When they create the experiment so that the people running the experiment, the experimenters, don't know which treatment is being given to the experimental units, that's called double blind. Double blind obviously is better than single blind, but single blind is better than having the subjects know which treatment they're getting. It's not always feasible to make an experiment double blind, but if you can, it's better. Questions? Noah?
Wait, if they do a double blind experiment, how are they going to know if the results are? I'm confused on how they know if
So,
the results are.
Does anybody watch Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah.
I used to. That's where my brain always goes with this one. Never mind, there's only 3 of you that raise their hand. So there's always somebody who knows. Because I guess when I think of this, my brain always thinks, like I said, prescription drugs. So there's somebody who always knows this is the prescription drug and this is the placebo. In the doctor who's giving it to the patient can't know. So there is somebody who knows so that they're not just, randomly handing out pills. Somebody knows which one is the correct one. But the doctor, they can find out after. But the doctor and the patient don't know. And that would be double blind. Because if a doctor knows,
It's single blind?
it's single blind, and that introduces a bunch of issues. Like a doctor may go, oh, I think Carter's whatever is not as bad as Noah's, so I'm going to give him the actual treatment and he's going to get better, and I'm going to be like, oh, Carter, this is really going to help you, and with you it's worse, and so I'm like, it might work, and it might not. And the doctor knowing and then talking to the patient can cause issues with the experiment as well. So double blind is best. Single blind is good. No blind is okay. I mean, there's times you can't make it blind at all. But single blind is good, double blind is best. Did that clarify?
A little bit.
Any other questions? No? All right. Try the exit task for me. I'm going to pull up the announcements.
Yeah,
2 days in a row, right? What?
you're on a roll.
What's wrong with me?